welcome everyone from my side. So let's directly jump in. So we are having Michael and Fredrik today from OneTwenty to talk about the journey of scaling OneTwenty. Now, OneTwenty is a startup that is currently in our CDL-Berlin cohort, and I know they're developing a solution to revolutionize diabetes treatment. So welcome, Michael. Would you like to start by telling a little bit more about OneTwenty and yourself?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Iris. Hi there. I'm Michael, and I'm co-founder and CEO of OneTwenty. And as such, I'm responsible for commercials, financials, strategic aspects, and ultimately for the QMS. Before OneTwenty, I was helping large health tech or finance corporations with their technology strategies or transformation, big projects. And on my path, I founded 4 tech companies and exited 2 of them. And 6 years ago, my path crossed with the path of my co-founder. So maybe some sentences about what is OneTwenty. 2 of my best friends live with diabetes type 1, and I experience their challenges every day. Apart from the long-term health challenges, you are constantly absorbed by this disease day and night. So maybe you can imagine that you are distracted about like 100 to 150 times per day by diabetes. You have to measure, you have to track, you have to eat, you have to correct, you have to inject, measure again, think, log. So it's a constant burden. And think about what that means for concentration at work, for going out with friends, for doing sports. And at one point, my co-founder and I decided that we want to solve these challenges somehow. Our starting point at that time were millions of biomarkers, data from about 40,000 users that we had from our health app in our previous startup. And based on that, we developed a machine learning solution that was able to identify food patterns in blood glucose curves. So we were able to automate food tracking. And from there, we developed a solution that predicts blood glucose 2 hours in advance. So high or low blood sugar isn't a surprise anymore. And based on that, we finally developed a solution, a software to manage insulin pumps, and that decides what to inject, what dosing of insulin your body would need. And that's the point where we started OneTwenty as a company. Just to give you an impression, with that, we remove about 95% of the mental distractions from people with diabetes, meaning that instead of the 100 times per day of distraction, there's about 4 to 5 interactions per day. So to put it in a nutshell, our goal is to relieve people living with diabetes from their daily burden so that they can live a more stress-free life. And we do that through artificial intelligence. And now maybe you can imagine what that means for our regulatory requirements for a product that can potentially kill people. Fred, what about you?
Yeah, so when these guys reached out to me, I said, no, you don't. They convinced me after a while, though. My name is Fredrik. I'm a Swede, living in Austria, of all places. Yes, it does happen. And I've spent my whole life, more or less, as an entrepreneur. Built a few companies so far. The biggest one, which is relevant today, is My Sugar, which still, sadly, is the biggest digital health exit, I think, in Europe so far, which is really embarrassing for Europe, by the way. But it was a lot of fun, and I learned so much. Through the years, I've become more fascinated with the regulatory items and quality management systems, because it's designing the company, designing the culture, designing methods of scaling, enabling scaling. And strange life, man. Now I'm a chief compliance officer. It happens too. I'm also a business angel, investing in 25 companies, worked with INSEAD as executive in residence. I'm on a couple of boards in healthcare and such too. But, my day job or night job, I'm not sure, is chief compliance of OneTwenty. And I had diabetes since 44 years. And my role at My Sugar was head of R&D. So when these guys told me we can predict glucose 2 hours in advance, I thought I knew how things work. And I told them no. Then they showed it to me and I became convinced. And after a while, we realized that, all right, this can be really huge. Let's build something beautiful together. So I joined in January to be the chief compliance officer. Yep.
That's a beautiful story, and also a very interesting backstory. OneTwenty. Now, I know like starting a MedTech company is quite daunting, right? Like compared to developing a consumer product, the barrier of entry is much higher, and a big part of it is, of course, due to the regulatory requirements. Could you guys share with us some initial challenges you guys faced, particularly in terms of regulatory considerations?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can imagine at the beginning as a startup, you're super ambitious. So you have this solution in hand. You know that it can help people a lot and change their lives. So we thought, hey, cool. Let's get that done. Let's go. Let's push it and sell it to end users within the next 6 months. We had little experience in regulatory matters at that time. We didn't want to accept that it might take forever or long. So to be honest, our biggest challenge at the beginning was our own ambition in a highly regulated market. And maybe second challenge was that we met a lot of people at the beginning with very different views and opinions on the regulatory path and on the requirements of regulatory. Experts, investors, partners, none of them really had a very deep knowledge about the topic, but everybody had a very strong opinion, and that doesn't really help. So the biggest challenge for us was the time and to have the luck to find the right setup, which, for example, we found with Fredrik. We have to find a good compliance person, a good like an appropriate consultant. So the setup is really important. And by the way, if there is somebody out there who is at the same situation that we were at the beginning, please contact us. We can connect you to really, really good people that really can help you and find your path through it. And I think also one challenge is the high velocity, the limited resources that you have as a startup. So it is very important knowing that you have a marathon in front of you, that you manage your cash, you manage your energy, and are not burned out of energy and cash too early, because it will take time. So I think that's, I don't know, Fredrik, how you see it, but from my perspective, that's the 3 key challenges at the beginning for us.
It's also like the first time you build a QMS and had to read through ISO 13485 and MDR and 62366, 62304, 14971, 5338, and so on and so forth. It's daunting, man. It's daunting. Where do you start, right? But if you read through them and think through your own experience as an engineer or whatever you are, right, you start to see the kernels behind them. After a few years, you understand what they actually want. And in the end, that comes down to like thinking things through and not endangering patients and do what you promised, right? It's simple reading. And then there are controls to implement them. So think through that as a foundation for what you do. And that helps. And I must say that when I joined operationally with Michael and Julian, they already set up a QMS based on templates and thinking things through in one of these frameworks that you can buy online or be a member of. And it was thought through. They put effort in and was fairly good. but it was not like perfect for operationalizing and make it part of day-to-day life at the company. And that is also something which is very important at the start. Like, how do we live this? And how do we make it the day-to-day life? Joining up and starting to speak with them about this, it was like, yes, they had thought bring things through already, and that was beautiful. But the last little 20%, as always, Pareto, blah, 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 I don't need to take that one up. But the last 20% were not there yet. I mean, so it's really good if you as a founder and CEO actually design this yourself first or sketch it out. Then it becomes part of culture. Otherwise, you're going to be a mackerel on a sandwich when audit comes.
Okay, that's definitely like an interesting view. But going a little bit back to what Michael mentioned, right? Like, I know like he's not the only one. Many other medtech startups find the whole regulatory compliance very bothersome because they see it as some kind of box that they have to tick or something that creates the extra workload, right? I'd like to like dive deeper into your opinions on this topic. So do you think the whole QMS and the agile and dynamic startup culture kind of contradictory to each other?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And I would say yes. If dynamic startup culture for you is means creative chaos and people who can realize themselves every day. But I think agility and flexibility, they only have a value for your company if they follow a clear direction, and if people don't pull into different directions against each other. And from my opinion, that's what QMS means. I mean, it defines the space of action. It defines what we want to do and how we want to do it, and how we want to move forward. And I think it's essential if you want to dynamism and flexibility to be productive and goal oriented. So the contradiction that you mentioned most probably depends more on where you want to go and what you want to be. But for us, it's essential, and it's super helpful and super straightforward.
Yeah, sums it up well. Can add another note or two to it, though. This is medicine you're dealing with. Shut up and do the work. It's like, stop pretending you're not in medicine. It doesn't work. In that case, you're just going to burn money and burn out, because you'll never be allowed to get to market. Where if you do, maybe go to jail. And I've never heard someone go to jail because they didn't do the QMS properly. But the pulled from market, yes. And that sucks. So just do the work. You pick this field.
Yeah, that's definitely the right attitude. Now, we're talking a little bit like at a high level, and for some of our listeners who are thinking of starting a medtech company, or maybe even like already in the process of starting one, could you share like a little bit more about your day-to-day experience regarding like compliance to the regulatory requirements and like all the different industry standards?
Maybe that's more like in depth. That's a topic for Fredrik, but maybe on a high level, because you started at a high level, maybe let me share one very important thought, and Fredrik started to talk about it a minute ago. When we were starting to work on the content of a QMS, we also thought it's boring and it's like, yeah, we have to do it. It's a necessity. But then we had to think about our values and how we want to hire people and how we want to onboard them and to train them, and what our criteria are for suppliers and how we want to do sales and so on and so forth. So we completely thought through our company and how it should be if we are 10 or 50 or 100 people. And I think especially for startup founders or MedTech founders, that gives you so much clarity about where you want to go. So if you approach investors or new hires, you have a very clear view you can give them and communicate a very different level of security where the journey is going to go and how we want to work. So I think through this work, you prepare your startup for scaling from the first moment, from the beginning. So you kind of like skip this typical startup chaos where after 30 people, nobody knows anymore what to do and how to do it properly. And honestly, I mean, Fredrik mentioned the jail thing, but from the other side, also from the user side, if you're developing an app that or solution that helps people, but also can kill people, I mean, there's no other way around it. I couldn't personally sleep anymore if I knew that at some point this whole thing could crash down on us because some engineer doesn't know how to do stuff. So it's as such, it's a perfect preparation for scaling. Or maybe, Fredrik, you can give more insights on the details of ISO and standards and stuff.
I'd love to. Well, yeah, it's a preparation for scaling. It's you design the scaling of your company. You know, see it not as a burden, but actual thoughtful design.
Mm-hmm.
And it's enforced by law, and you have coaches from the notified bodies. Well, some see them as auditors, and they can kill you. Shut up. They're really helpful because they show you where you could tune your machinery, prepare the company better, and be safer for your patients, right? And so when my previous company got acquired, sounds really silly to say, but it's kind of funny. When my sugar was acquired, we were 40 people. And a year later, we were 160 people. I don't know about you, but I had not scaled a company from 40 to 160 in a year. And suddenly you had to. The preparation we'd made, though, in just like Michael said, designing the onboarding, seeing to it that it fulfills the requirements set out in 27001 GDPR, 62304, 13485. You know, it all has kernels of best practice, right? And it's based on sound friggin' logic and best practices. You know, just see to it that you fulfill the requirement behind the requirement, and you're good. But it helped us scale without anyone quitting, dropping out, burning out, whatever, right? It helped us scale. And we still paid startup salaries in the first 2 years after the exit. So we designed for scaling our teams, and yeah, it worked out. Okay, so if we go back to the actual things you need to live up to, 13485, you have to have a quality management system, which is there for medical devices. Thoughtful design to get rid of risks to your end users and being able to live up to reporting standards. I guess that's kind of the core of it, right? And then there's stuff about documentation management and stuff like that. We also need to abide by that, but it all makes sense in the end. Imagine you have a vigilance case and someone dies. Okay? What the hell happened? You were responsible in some way. Did you think this through properly? Well, if your quality management system 3 years ago changed since then, and that product was given to that patient 3 years ago, you need to be able to traverse back and see, all right, what happened? Where are the records? Did we make a mistake? Was the mistake we actually knew about? Then it's your ass in the frying pan. If it was something you designed against already, but it slipped through, okay, it happens. Mistakes happen. And this is also minded in these standards. So just thinking through it, that not just in the best of cases, but in the worst of cases, what do we need to be able to prove or show? Were we thoughtful and mindful enough of our users? That's what it's about. So read through 1345, it's just a few pages, and then you go deeper in 62304 when it comes to medical device software, which is really like my stuff. About producing medical hardware, I'm less versed in that, even though I've worked with a few companies in that field too. Okay. 62304 is old. It's old, man. 2001 is when the Agile Manifesto was published, I think. I can't remember anymore. I'm getting too old. See, gray in my beard even. But and then a couple of years later, 62304 was published, and there have been amendments and stuff. Agile, it was kind of a new idea back then. So, but it's still alignable, where you can still apply a methodology of quick iteration loops and such. It's absolutely possible. It's even something sought by the notified bodies. Because if you have a mindful way of changing things, which takes input into account at once, that's actually what you should be doing. That should be part of any medical technology company. In software, we're lucky to be able to move a bit faster. So use that for what it is. Mindful quality and control. And see to it you have proper feedback loops. And follow a thought-through process to minimize risk. And do your friggin' job. Now, everything in software engineering, I don't know how long you've been working in software engineering. I'm old, like I said, so I've been around for a while. Many steps of your process you can automate. You can automate testing and such. We're no longer in the 80s and 90s when stuff was a bit more creative. That means chaotic in this case. Many of the steps can be automated to actually lift the burden off the engineer, off the person building something. And that is actually core of what's pretty much prescribed and described by the standards. So think through how can you automate things to make it easy for anyone in the company to understand and deploy and work, right? It's kind of hinted out in the standards. To help a little push in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
But at the core, though, as I see it, is risk management. I mean, why else are we doing this? It's to reduce risk, of course. That's the foundation. Not the reporting, not the document management. It comes down to how do we reduce risk for people? And have we been thoughtful in our design of our product to help people not die or have adverse events? So how do we think through and work with patients, clinicians, whatever, whoever else is a stakeholder, to find what could go wrong and mitigate it, to get rid of that and design that into the core of the product? Honestly, that's kind of where one should start. But for that, you need a foundation. So if you're a newbie now, in a year or so, you'll be a veteran, maybe. But start thinking through the thing as like building up an operating system for the company, establishing the values and how you think things through, go into risk management, and then build processes around that. Build up the system, how you work around that, because it's kind of important. I don't know where that try to do Irish kind of important came from, but yeah, there you have it. So risk management is really at the core, and the rest is a framework to make it work and hold you accountable.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure those are some really good tips for setting up a mental framework of approaching setting up a QMS and the regulatory strategies for an early stage MedTech company. Now, Fredrik, you touched on the communication with the notified bodies, and that's something that always comes up when I talk to other medical device or medical MedTech startups, right? Can you share some of your strategies on how you can effectively communicate with these notified bodies or other regulatory agencies or stakeholders throughout your scaling process?
Yeah, email, phone.
So it always worked for you.
Yeah, it's just call them. It's their job to keep people safe, and they want to help. Like, why else do you become an auditor or work at a notified body? Why else do you become the big honcho at the FDA? Is it because it's a perfect job? No, it's because you have values that are like directed in reviewing medical stuff for safety and see to it patients are safe. Just call them. That's what I did in our first interactions with the FDA. I called, I can't remember his name, sadly. It was a bunch of years ago. I called him directly on his phone and had a half-hour chat, and then we started working together, and he put me in touch with him. It's not that bad, but how do you communicate with them? A little trick. They cannot coach you. They are not consultants. They are able to tell you simple replies and how to do things if you already design it with the regulations in place or in mind, right? You can ask them, have I interpreted this correctly to be able to set it up in this way? Yes, no. That they can say. They can't give you the reply. You still have to do your work. So I think that's the best communication strategy.
That's definitely a myth buster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of times we hear like people talking about how they just cannot reach these notified bodies, but there you have it. Like Fredrik confirmed that you can just email them. That's really good to hear. I'm sure for many of the founders there.
A lot of changes are happening in the ecosystem. Well, it happened a couple of years ago, and some people just didn't keep up. Notified bodies, look at you. MDD, MDR, all that shenanigans, right? They're packed. They have waiting lines, waiting times. They have a lot to do right now. So maybe it won't be super swift to get in touch. But once you have a relationship, once you have a contract, once you have an auditor and a few audits, you build up that relationship to be able to work with them in this way. Also, very important, they're not evil. They're on your side and the patient's side. Just work with them and show your dirty laundry because they can help point out what's not working. Designing around the findings, with the findings in mind from an audit, you can design to have a better system. That's what it's there for.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really good to hear, like for some of the listeners. Now, do you guys have any other advice that you would give to like other MedTech startups looking to establish a robust regulatory strategies from the get-go?
Yeah, maybe let me start with like a rather CEO perspective. I think what is very important when you start to do that is that it should be considered as everyone's part of life. It is not something that the compliance guy in the dark room does and annoys us. It's not something that Fredrik owns and he will do it. It can only live and it makes only sense if everyone lives it. The engineers, the sales guy, the marketing guy, the CEO, and obviously the compliance person. So I think that's key. That's a key, I would say, key advice from what I learned. And then, as Fredrik said, start early to communicate. Don't wait and don't try to avoid it until like you have time or so. Because the earlier you start, the easier it is to implement. And at the beginning, use templates. They are available and they help you to create the first version, to jump on the topic and to find your way within that topic. And then people, advisors, consultants can help you. There's a lot of really good people out there. And I think also maybe an advice, consider QMS as your springboard and your safety belt. It's both, because it helps a lot of being productive. It helps a lot of aligning your company. And if you like, if the mindset towards QMS is the positive one and the productive one, then that helps a lot. Fred, what would you add? And maybe one last thing, sorry, Fred, to interrupt you before you start. I heard a lot, like people asking us, can't I let AI produce my QMS content? No, AI cannot write you QMS content, because you have to think about it. You have to go through it. You have to like reflect your company, your products, your ideas into that. So there's maybe portion of it that the AI could write, like the standard things, but it's a tiny bit, and it doesn't make sense to make AI generate your content. Right. Now you.
I'm so in love with you, man. You're saying such good things. Don't keep the chief compliance officer.
So it's public, Fred.
Oh man, you're so good. What Michael said. But regulatory strategy. So there are more countries than Germany or Switzerland, right? There are. There's even this strange part of the European Union thing we've got going, called the UK. They kind of have their own thing going, and Switzerland too, kind of wonky, right? And then there's US, and there's South Korea, Middle East, Australia, Canada. They're hardcore, man. So think through from the start. What are the more specific requirements and gaps between the different regulatory areas, right? With My Sugar, we were in 70 countries as a medical device with our app. It was a lot of work. So our QMS and regulatory team was about 5 people when we were 40, because we were in 60 countries by then, right? It's a lot of work, but it helps design for scaling, so it's worth the effort. If you are able, connect with people who have done it before, hands-on, and designed it themselves and didn't use consultants. Then you get real stories and real experience to tackle this. Every product is different. Every strategy is different. It should be part of your go-to-market strategy to think this through, like which region when. In our case, I kind of prepare us for CFR and FDA, but I'm focused on implementing 13485 and everything that comes with it, right? Now the FDA has also said that they'll shift to respecting 13485 more than the little, like, 20% difference that used to be the case. So that's a good good movement there too. Different countries are stringent on different things. Health Canada, a lot of work, man, a lot of work. They're hardcore. TGA, fairly chill. That's Australia, New Zealand. FDA, much, I must say, easier to work with than the EU. But once you have had a few audits in the EU, you start using it for what it is, learning experience. So yeah, think through where you want to go first and when.
Cool. I know OneTwenty has been working with a number of mentors at CDL-Berlin. For example, Carla Krivet, who has 20 years of experience in different leadership positions in different MedTech companies. Now, Michael, how did you find the experience working with Carla and other CDL mentors, and how did CDL's mentorship or resources contribute to the development of your regulatory strategy?
Yeah, I mean, she is as all the other mentors are so much fun and so cool people. So when we were accepted at CDL's health cohort in September, we were in the middle of the process working on that topic, and CDL matched us in different sessions with mentors who have, for example, really good experience with regulatory topics like Carla. And you have to imagine that during these sessions, but also between these sessions, you have a lot of time and interactions and meetings and workshops with these mentors. And they tell you about their fails and about their massive issues and how you can avoid it. So it's really learning from their experience. It's not on a high level, but on a very tangible level. And the interesting thing there is that you have CEOs of global companies who are responsible for QMS and who sat in front of the FDA and had to defend their QMS. But you also have startup founders who did the same thing on a very lower or smaller level. So I can definitely, I mean, anybody who is in this call here and who has a startup and who thinks about like getting help, I can definitely recommend applying for CDL because it's every minute you invest in there and every minute you get as interaction with mentors is really worth it. I think we avoided a lot of mistakes that we wouldn't have avoided without these interactions.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Michael. As the venture manager at CDL-Berlin, it always just lights me up when I hear how CDL delivers values to fuel the growth of our startups. For those who are not familiar with CDL-Berlin, we are an objective-based mentorship program, and we're here to support deep tech startups in the health space by bringing together world-class mentors who are corporate leaders, successful entrepreneurs, renowned scientists, and seasoned advisors or investors, and our founders, of course. So founders with the world-changing technologies come to our program. They meet our mentors, take home with them both the valuable business insights, network connections, and more importantly, the refined objectives to work on in between the sessions. So far we've seen like really great results in terms of accelerating the growth of our startups and also equity creation. And OneTwenty is definitely one of the great examples. So for those who want to follow OneTwenty's footsteps, look out for our application for the next cohort, which will soon begin in April. Now, other than CDL, another valuable source of resources for MedTech startups is, of course, our partner, EIT Health Innovators Community. Krishna, would you like to tell us a little bit more about it?
Hi. So, thank you, Iris. I'm here joining for the part of EIT Health Innovators Community. If you haven't heard about us, if you haven't joined, please do check out the platform. We are building a community of healthcare professionals, be it either scientists, researchers, entrepreneurs, policymakers, everybody who is connected in some way to the healthcare sector to join our community and to have discussions and so on. But why rather say than show a video? I would like to show a video what the community is about, please.
Are you looking to develop groundbreaking ideas?
Maybe you're thinking of making the move from academia to entrepreneurship or turning your research into a business.
Or maybe you're the CEO of a startup looking to hire.
How about working with our team to organize your own workshop or webinar?
Whatever your thing is, we guarantee you'll find like-minded members in our network of innovators.
Our community connects every corner of Europe and beyond, creating a global wealth of expertise and ideas.
You'll also get discounted access to conferences and training, career development, and mentoring.
The Innovators Community team is here for you, so don't be shy.
Let's shape the future of healthcare together.
So sign up and build your profile now.
So that was a new video that we made recently. Currently, we are a community of around 4,000 plus people, and we are supported by EIT Health, which is co-funded by the European Union. Being a part of this network also gives you access to the wider EIT alumni network and the other EIT kicks that are present right now in the European ecosystem. So please do check out our platform and do sign up at community.eithealth.eu. And there's a lot of benefits, a lot of new members, a lot of access to different workshops and events waiting for you. Please do check out the platform. And now let's begin the Q&A. Iris?
From Glenn. Michael, how did the emergent nature of ML fit with the planning requirements of QMS?
Most probably Fred can talk more about it, but maybe from a different angle. The interesting point in our case is that through knowing and understanding what the regulatory requirements are towards machine learning, we decided very early that our core product has to be regulatory friendly and regulatory known, meaning that we found a way to cope with machine learning, but to remove all the parts or treat the parts differently that might cause problems or issues with regulatory requirements at the moment. So we kind of created a core product that is smooth for the regulatory path. So that's also kind of a strategy that you can think about. But maybe Fred, you can answer more detailed about the larger context of this question.
There are now international frameworks for this. They're kind of fresh. In Europe, you have 5338, I think it's called, or 5883. Google is smarter than me often. So look for that one. And the US has also guidelines and frameworks for deploying ML models in medical devices. At least the beginnings of them, they're fairly simple, just a few pages. And I just learned from a friend of ours 2 months ago to take a look at the South Korean framework for deploying ML in software as a medical device. I'm really grateful for that because that was really useful. The South Korean notified body or regulatory, their organization, I can't speak Korean, it's a strange name system, but they were actually really useful, on how to establish things, not just kind of think about this, which the US regulations state, right? But just like Michael said, it's fresh, it's new. Of the 100 ML models and ML-based products deployed under the FDA using a 510K or PMA, that's too many acronyms, I'm so sorry. The approved products are all in non-acute care or non-critical care, or it's in finding stuff in an MRI scan, right? It's not applied directly to patients. That hasn't really gone through the gauntlet yet. And I see trouble there on the horizon. Someone's going to be first, and then everyone else can 510K and say equivalent device. So the first one that does it is going to have to go through PMA and millions and studies and then come to market with it. And then everyone else is going to copy. So who's going to take the lead? We'll see. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I guess along the same line, the next question is along the same line. So maybe we can quickly touch on that. Do you see any challenges coming from the AI Act, considering what is required from medical devices using AI?
Fred, it's yours.
Okay. I love that Europe has taken this step. I see it as like what I've read up on so far. I haven't had time to go deep on this, so I can't give you actual good answers, right? But the step is wonderful that we're taking that as the European Union. It's helpful to guide, but how shall it execute? And how does the international community react, or how far behind will we be if we, we'll see. I have to read it through in detail, but reading it through in detail and mapping requirements from that into your QMS should be a normal thing for you to do. So that comes down to the operational level. It's there now. Map it and see how it fits. See what you can and cannot do. Who's going to be the first to fall because they break it? That's going to tell us more. Sadly, that's how it works.
Maybe one thought to add on that. I mean, there are probably some contradictions between the AI Act and ADR and these regulations. But from my perspective, I mean, in our case, we are Class 2B or Class 3 if we talk about fully closed loop solution. So we are anyways extremely highly regulated because our risk is high. So I think we are already complying and already doing the necessary things. And for example, our machine learning solution is not a black box. It has reasoning. It's a white box solution. So we, from my perspective, already fulfill these requirements, but there's a long way to go until these regulations will be aligned and make sense also for medical devices.
Okay. The next question is about something different. So what is your point of view on the several disparate requirements when it comes to different European requirements concerning cybersecurity? And how did you handle that as a startup? Was that a part of your go-to-market plan?
That's again a Fred question.
Fred is yours.
I love this stuff. All right. So in our previous company called Health, Payment Service and Healthcare, I was also chief compliance. And we had to abide by financial and privacy, security. We were handling medical claims, hundreds of thousands and millions of them, right? All the data is in there. So it was really important. I had to learn a lot because before that, I only did medical. Now suddenly I had to do banking and credit cards and stuff like that. It was fun. Doing that with a background of medical, I realized that it's the same, more or less, risk-based approach, etc., etc. Yes, countries are different. So when you apply ISO 27001 or live up to GDPR and French regulations and UK GDPR and HIPAA and CCPA or whatever it's called. I always forget the acronyms. I'm sorry. It kind of distills down to the same thing, and the controls you establish as a company, it's same, are kind of the same with a bit of variation and different naming. So read through the guidelines, do a gap analysis, read through the laws, do a gap analysis, see what you actually have to implement according to your assessment, and run it through together with an advisor or such, and then implement them, these regulations as part of your QMS to think it through from the beginning to end. I think I've said that a few times this chat, right? It's the same. Now, there are differences, though, between countries. So if you, like someone laughed at in the chat, France is different. They go into different details, add a few requirements in their interpretation of GDPR. France is different. You have to adapt as a company. Nothing to say about it, really. read through things, do your best. That's your responsibility. Now, there are much more fun to be had. There is even, English kind of, there is more fun to be had if you go to the Middle East, where, for instance, if you go to the UAE, every emirate has a different regulation. It's kind of compliant, but not really. And, oh, man, that's a mess. So be ready to spend a lot of time thinking these things through. Yes, it should be part of your go-to-market plan. At least plan for executing according to the local regulations. Every country you enter, you need to do your homework. No one can be perfect, but do your best. That's your obligation.
Okay. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Okay, from Madalena. Who can help you to understand under which regulation your medical software is?
I mean, on one hand, and Fredrik mentioned that several times, there is obviously experts and consultants. You just have to find the right ones. And as I said, you can contact us to get contacts and help here. But there is also, I mean, there's a lot of material, and there is even from the MDR, just Annex 8 that helps you go through various questions and categories and classify your device or your software. So there's a lot of guidance online already that gives you help, but it's always good to talk to experts and consultants, because it's not always 100% clear. I mean, as I said, in our case, when you go through the questions, it became pretty fast and clear. If you're class 3, then, I mean, you're class 3. But there's like gray zones where you might need somebody external. But again, Google it, Annex 8 and MDR classification guidelines. That will help a lot in that question.
Right. Yeah, I see the rest of the questions. I mean, Michael and Fredrik already answered them in the chat. So I guess we're coming to the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Michael and Fredrik, for sharing your experience and valuable insights with us. Please connect with them on LinkedIn or other channels for further discussions. And for those who are interested in CDL-Berlin and EIT Health Innovators Community, definitely check out our LinkedIn pages and websites for more events.
Visit community.eithealth.eu to join our community and shape the healthcare landscape with us. For more such videos, subscribe to our channel.